those who order others to do justice. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Give such people the glad tidings of very painful punishment, very painful chastisement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the history of mankind, there's only one nation, one community that is convicted of perhaps the most egregious, the most serious, the most grave crime, which is the crime of a murder. But not the murder of any person, not the murder of an ordinary person. Even the murder of an ordinary person is a serious aggression in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But committing the murder of the most important person in the sight of Allah, and that is a prophet of Allah, the ambassador of Allah. You know, there is a universal law in the world, the law of universal diplomacy, where ambassador of a nation is considered immune under all circumstances. No matter what happens, you do not hurt or harm the ambassador of that nation, even if you are at war with that nation. That ambassador has to remain immune. There was once a scenario where the Prophet ﷺ received a delegation sent by Musaylima al-Kadhdhab, who later on claimed to be the Prophet of Allah, falsely of course. So when the Prophet ﷺ was still alive, he sent two of his men to make some sort of settlement with the Prophet ﷺ, that you rule half of this part of the Arabia, I'll rule half of that part of the Arabia. And the Prophet ﷺ became so angry and upset at even the proposal of these people and by Musaylima. He said, if you two were not the ambassadors of someone else from outside, I would have had you killed. That's how egregious their crime was. But he, of course, honored and respected that tradition of protecting the lives of ambassadors. So, on this earth, prophets of Allah are the ambassadors of Allah. They are the direct ambassadors, the messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, no matter what happens, you don't touch a prophet of Allah. You don't harm a prophet of Allah. And historically, every community, every nation has avoided that sin and that crime, except one community, and that is the community of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, the Israelites. They are the only one who are convicted of this heinous crime, but not only once, twice, multiple times. They killed multiple prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unjustly. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala underlines in Quran. وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ. They killed the prophets of Allah unjustly. If there was some justification for killing a prophet of Allah, Allah would have excused them as well. That, okay, there was some justification you had. But never in history they had any justification of killing prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they went ahead and committed this crime of killing the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By the way, these people, they tried to do the same with our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. We talked about it in tafsir of Surah Al-Hashr, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to discuss a matter of someone that belonged to Banu Qaynuqa, a tribe, a Jewish tribe in Medina. He went to their tribe to discuss this and pay them some money or blood money, whatever that was, to settle the case on a peaceful term, because they were allies of Muslims at that time. All the Jewish tribes, by their own voluntary agreement, were allies of the Prophet ﷺ. So, due to that agreement, the Prophet ﷺ went to settle this, and they plotted to kill the Prophet ﷺ. They pre-planned, this was premeditated. So they decided they will somehow trick the Prophet ﷺ to come to the shade of a wall, and then they will send someone from the other side on top of the wall and throw a rock on the Prophet ﷺ, which would kill the Prophet ﷺ. But Allah sent Jibreel alayhi salam to inform the Prophet ﷺ of their plot. Before they could execute their plot, he left immediately from there. And then the retribution came afterwards. Then they were exiled and they were kicked out of Medina. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Quran that these people who deny and reject the verses of Allah, those who kill the prophets of Allah unjustly and kill those who tell them to do justice, to be fair, for them there is the glad tiding of a painful punishment. So do not think that it is strange or difficult or hard or impossible from such people who still have that kind of beliefs among them to kill babies, to kill children, to kill women, to kill people who are literally on a deathbed in a hospital, who are wounded, who are limbless, whatever. For them, it's no big deal to kill a baby, to kill an infant. Allah is watching everything, and Allah is recording everything, and Allah does not forget. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Please continue to remember your brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, in dua. And we just heard, probably yesterday or the day before yesterday, IDF bombed a masjid in the West Bank on the suspicion of that there was some planning going on in that. So they bombed the masjid. Allah is watching. Allah's house got bombed, right? Allah is watching. So no, we don't need to worry about it. It's not our house. That wasn't our house. That was Allah's house. So the one who owns the house is watching and has all the power and control that you can think of. So we rest our case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We rest our grievances with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa ilallahi al-mushtaka. As Yaqub alayhi salam said, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I rest my grievance, my grief, my sadness, my case with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the best disposer of affairs. And please continue to make dua for Brother Mahmoud Alam and Brother Qamar Siddiqi as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant both of them shifa, both of them comfort. Jazakumullah.